Before the world knew his name, before the voice became iconic, and before the Oscars and narration credits rolled in, Morgan Freeman was just a man. Surviving, not thriving, not celebrated, just holding on. Born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1937, Morgan didn't come into this world with privilege or easy paths. He came into it with quiet strength, raised by a hardworking mother and often moved from city to city, chasing stability that never quite stayed. From a young age, Freeman had a voice that could silence a room. Deep, calm, commanding, but a golden voice means nothing when no one's listening. After serving in the Air Force and bouncing between odd jobs, he chased acting like chasing wind, always out of reach. He took roles no one wanted, played characters no one remembered, and for decades, he was that guy you might recognize, but never know by name. His 20s came and went, then his 30s, his 40s, still no fame, still no breakthrough. But he never stopped, because underneath that calm voice lived a storm, a relentless belief that this was his calling. Every day he got up and auditioned, not just for roles, but for life, for survival. He performed in community theaters, children's shows, and voiceovers, each one a step, not toward fame, but toward faith. Faith that the time would come, that preparation would one day meet opportunity. People don't talk about the loneliness of being gifted but unseen. The frustration of watching less talented people get the roles, the headlines, the applause, while you quietly grind in the shadows. Freeman lived in that space for years. He watched time pass, watched dreams fade for others, but held his quietly firmly because he understood something most people never learn. Purpose doesn't expire. While the world saw a man getting older, with average roles, Freeman was becoming sharper, deeper, more powerful in silence. He wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was becoming the spotlight. And he didn't let bitterness grow where belief needed to live. Most people would have given up by 40. Many do. But Morgan Freeman, he kept going, not loudly, not desperately, just faithfully. And that's the lesson. Sometimes greatness doesn't rush. It waits for the right soul to carry it. Freeman's story didn't start at 50. That's just when the world finally noticed. But the real story, the heroic part, was the decades of invisible effort before that. By the time Morgan Freeman was in his mid-30s, most people around him had settled into jobs, into lives, into the quiet resignation that maybe this is it. But Freeman, he was still fighting, still chasing a dream that hadn't given him any promise in return. He was a black man in America during a time when roles for black actors were scarce, stereotyped, and almost never respected. But even then, with rejection piled higher than rent bills, he stayed the course. He worked wherever he could. Educational TV shows, small theater productions, off-Broadway plays, children's programming. He became known on The Electric Company, a kids show in the 70s, not as a star but as an everyday face, a paycheck, a job. And though he was grateful, the dream wasn't just to work, it was to be seen, to be valued for what he could bring or not for what the world was willing to offer. There's a particular kind of pain in watching your talent go unnoticed, not because you're not good enough, but because no one's paying attention. You give your all to a performance that disappears after curtain call. You speak lines from your soul only to hear polite claps in half-filled rooms. You wait for the phone to ring, and when it does, it's not the call you prayed for. That was Freeman's life for decades, repetition without recognition, passion without payoff. He could have quit many times, and no one would have blamed him. After all, who keeps grinding when nothing's changing? Who keeps pouring out excellence into a system that doesn't seem to care? But Freeman wasn't performing for applause. He was preparing for impact. He knew that what you build in silence echoes louder when the world finally listens. His dream was delayed, yes, but it was never denied because he never denied himself. This chapter of his life, the middle years, the forgotten years, is where most people give up. They think if success hasn't come by 30 or 40, it never will. That's what society teaches us, that your prime has an expiration date, that if you haven't made it by now, you probably never will. But Morgan Freeman's story says otherwise. His story says, maybe the delay is part of the design, because in those years of being overlooked, he wasn't just waiting, he was becoming sharper, wiser, more grounded. He was learning the power of patience, the depth of humility, and the quiet strength of endurance. So when his moment finally came, he didn't just walk into the light, he commanded it. When Morgan Freeman turned 50, the world finally paused long enough to notice the man it had ignored for decades. But what most people saw as an overnight success was, in truth, a lifetime in the making. Because what Freeman brought to The screen at 50 wasn't just talent, it was depth, patience, wisdom, and pain. And that kind of presence, it can't be faked. It can't be rushed. It has to be lived. His breakthrough didn't come in the form of some massive blockbuster or a glamorous Hollywood opportunity. It came quietly, just like his journey. First, in the stage production of Driving Miss Daisy, where he played a black chauffeur to a white woman in the segregated South. The performance was nuanced, human, real, and that role opened the first real door. But the moment the world truly took notice, it came in 1989 with the film adaptation of that same play alongside Jessica Tandy. People watched and suddenly realized, who is this man? Where has he been? Why haven't we seen him before? And the answer was simple, he's always been there, we just weren't looking. Then came Glory, Lean on Me, and eventually, the 1994 classic The Shawshank Redemption. These weren't just films, they were proof that greatness isn't bound by youth. That age doesn't dull purpose, it refines it. Freeman didn't explode onto the scene, he arrived. Calm, powerful, unshakable. Because he knew exactly who he was, and the audience could feel it. When he spoke on screen, it wasn't just acting, it was truth wrapped in poetry. His voice didn't just narrate lines, it commanded trust. His eyes didn't just portray characters, they carried experience. Because by the time he got to Hollywood's spotlight, he had lived more life than most stars ever would. And that life, the struggle, the waiting, the pain became his greatest asset. There's something poetic about making it later in life. It's not about proving anyone wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Freeman never let the world's silence convince him he wasn't worth hearing, he simply kept going. And when his moment came, he didn't just play the role, he elevated it. Most actors peak early, burn bright, and fade fast. But Morgan Freeman, he lit his fire after the world thought he had already missed the chance, and then never let it die. That's not luck, that's not timing, that's preparation. Meeting destiny. When the world claps for your success, they rarely understand the silence it took to get there. Morgan Freeman didn't just arrive at greatness, he waited for it, worked for it, and most importantly, grew into it. In a world obsessed with speed, with early wins and viral fame, Freeman was a living reminder that purpose has its own clock, and patience is the only language it speaks. While others sprinted, he walked. While others shouted, he listened. Because he understood something deeper. When you are built for something greater, rushing the process only weakens the foundation. His purpose was never just about becoming a star. It was about becoming the man worthy of being heard. And that takes time. Patience, for Freeman, wasn't passive, it was active endurance. It was showing up for small roles with big commitment. It was giving 100% to work that paid little and promised nothing. It was sitting in quiet rooms, script in hand, wondering if this was the role that would finally break through, and still giving it his soul, even if it wasn't. The beauty of his journey isn't just that he made it, it's that he made it with his soul intact. He didn't sell out, he didn't chase shortcuts. He trusted the process, and more importantly, he trusted himself. Because when you're led by purpose, you stop measuring yourself by timelines, you start measuring yourself by alignment, with who you are, and who you're becoming. That's why Freeman's characters always felt bigger than the screen. Whether he was playing a teacher, a prisoner, a president, or even God, there was something real behind the role. Something timeless, something human. You weren't just watching an actor, you were witnessing the quiet power of a man who waited until he was fully ready, and then owned the moment. And here's the truth. Patience without purpose leads to frustration, but patience with purpose, that's where legends are born. That's where resilience finds its roots. Morgan Freeman's life wasn't delayed, it was designed. Every rejection built humility. Every failure sharpened his character. Every year the world ignored him only added weight to the voice that would one day move millions. So the next time you feel behind in life, the next time the clock makes you anxious, the next time you wonder if your moment will ever come, remember Morgan Freeman. He didn't just wait, he prepared, he became, and when purpose and patience finally met, the world had no choice but to listen. Most people think legacy is about what you leave behind, but Morgan Freeman, he proved that legacy is about what you live through, the pain, the patience, the quiet battles that no one claps for. His story isn't just a timeline of late success, it's a masterclass in endurance, humility, and divine timing. A reminder that the world doesn't always reward talent when it's ready, it rewards it when you are. Freeman didn't just become a star, he became a symbol of what happens when you don't let the world define your pace, when you don't measure your worth by someone else's spotlight, He became the voice of wisdom, of calm strength, of powerful stillness in a world screaming for attention. His characters moved us not because they were loud or flashy, but because they spoke from a place of truth, a place that can only be reached when a person has lived through enough failure to stop fearing it. He showed us that success after 50 isn't just possible, it's meaningful, it's powerful, it's layered with depth that youth can't fake. He showed us that your journey doesn't have to follow the world's calendar, that your best chapter might be the one no one expected, not even you, and that maybe, just maybe, the longer it takes the more it means. In a society that glorifies the young and rushes the process. Morgan Freeman stood tall and said, "Wait, build slowly, trust deeply, don't break for anyone." His calm voice became a roar, not through volume, but through truth, and truth has no age limit. It doesn't expire, it doesn't fade. It only gets louder when it's earned. Legacy is not about being the most followed, the most watched, or even the most praised. It's about impact, silent, strong, and everlasting. Freeman's legacy isn't just the films he made, it's the message he lived, that your dreams don't have a deadline, that your value isn't tied to timing, that purpose doesn't retire. So if you're watching this and you feel like time has passed you by, if you think your window has closed, if you feel too old to begin or too late to matter, remember Morgan Freeman. Because he didn't find success in his youth, he built it in his silence, he carried it in his struggle, and he delivered it in his time. And if he could rise not in his prime, but because of it, then maybe your story isn't over, maybe it's just beginning, and maybe your legacy too will echo beyond time. Don't be afraid of growing slowly, be afraid only of standing still. Morgan Freeman.